Hi, I'm your host David, and welcome to another episode of The Edge a Leader Show. We're happy to have with us Ms. Aminder Mangat, an immigration lawyer and legal entrepreneur. Welcome, Ms. Aminder.
Thank you.
Well, it's nice to have you with us. To start us off, can you tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in law?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a couple things inspired me growing up. It was really my mother and my family. Growing up, my mom, she was, I grew up as in a South Asian background, and it was really important for my parents to, push me to a professional career. So they're like, you can take your pick. It's doctor, engineer, lawyer. So that was always in the back of my mind. But then, what really inspired me to end up in law was growing up, my family really encouraged debate and conversation, and we were always just huge talkers. And that was really formative growing up because I learned to have a voice and to have an opinion and to, stand by that opinion and advocate for that opinion. And it was always really encouraged in our household. And so I think from that, when I was trying to pick a career, I'm like, what do I want to do? It always seemed natural to be like, I love advocating for my own opinion myself. I actually could do that for other people. And it was always just this really natural step to be like, okay, I want to start doing something. And law just seemed like the next step. And also at the end of the day, of course, made my mom happy. So everybody won.
That's great. I mean, being a lawyer is a lucrative career, possibly saying that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us about some of the most challenging cases that you had to tackle?
Sure. I mean, I think every case there's the challenge. Like it could be small, it could be large, right? Every case really has its challenges. But I think a couple cases that come to mind are, well, one in particular was I had a client, she came to Canada, she had a student permit and she graduated, she was a postgraduate work permit, she got married and she was able to bring her spouse under a spousal open work permit. So when they applied for it, the IRCC had questions about whether they were in a bona fide relationship. So they called them in for an interview. So during the interview, what happened was the IRCC officer believed it wasn't a genuine marriage and the application was refused. But the result of which is they actually thought it was a fraudulent marriage. And so the result was that he was actually banned or found to have misrepresented. So what that caused was actually complications in a lot of ways. Number one, this separated this family, right? Separated, two of them being together. Two, it had implications for her to become a permanent resident because her spouse was inadmissible. And so, they were lost, they didn't know what to do. And they had talked to some people and they didn't really get good answers. And then through a friend or through a referral, they, found out about me. And so she had a conversation with me. But the challenge was that she talked to me 2 years after this decision had happened. And so typically what happens is you go to the federal court and there's a timeline. Two months you have to appeal a decision. This is way longer than that. So a lot of people at that point were saying you don't have an option, right? But I was like, no. I looked at the officer's notes. I was kind of reviewing it and I said, no, when you look at the decision, the interview was very genuine. You could see that it was really a bona fide relationship. So the decision of the officer was it was unreasonable. So I encouraged them. I said, let's go to the federal court. Let's see what we can do. Yes, it's a late filing. We can make an argument why, but I really think we should push this forward. So we did. They took my advice. We pushed it forward, and I was able to convince the Department of Justice, they represent the Minister of Immigration, that this was a very unreasonable case, and they actually settled it before even having to go to in front of a judge. And so that would not have happened if they didn't, want to push, or I didn't push to say, this is not this lost cause, right? And so now they're reunited, and she's on her pathway to get permanent residence. So, those can be challenges of just people getting faced with no's and just finding a way to advocate for them to push a narrative forward. So that's one example. I have another one if you'd like.
Sure, we can do that.
I can tell you all about my cases, but another one I found really challenging was I had a client who was self-represented and they did a spousal sponsorship. Seemed pretty straightforward. A couple had been together for a really long time. They had adult children. But what had happened is the client had worked for a government agency, and later that government agency or the government was known to have committed war crimes. So the IRCC officer that was evaluating the spousal invited them for an interview, but made the conclusion that because they were working for this government agency, that they themselves committed war crimes and therefore rendered them inadmissible for criminality, which is a very serious leap. This person had nothing to do with any war crimes, but this was a conclusion from this officer. So when you're dealing with this type of inadmissibility, you can't go to the Immigration Appeal Division, which is when you have an outside Canada spousal, where you go. You have to go to the federal court. So we were like, let's go to the federal court and argue this. And so one of the things that happened was we were able to, very reasonably explain that the conclusion that he was inadmissible for these 4 crimes was unreasonable. The Department of Justice agreed. And in the response memorandum said, yeah, we agree, but we still want to move this forward because we think that the officer didn't have a way to properly examine them because, some information was missing in the application. But what was interesting and the challenge was that they were still trying to push this to the federal court. But now they've lost their jurisdiction because in this case, because it's no longer an issue of criminality about this war crime, it has to go back to the Immigration Appeal Division. But the DOJ was trying to push it forward. And so when we got to the court, I would explain this to the judge, you actually don't have jurisdiction to hear this anymore. And the judge agreed. And so it was a very quick, consent at the board, and it went back down. And so, always looking for, these kind of ways to, push the client and advocate for the client is helpful because otherwise, we would have been in the federal court without jurisdiction.
Right. That's great. I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience. You were recently named by one of Toronto's top lawyers of 2024 by Post City Magazine, and that's really impressive. So, to you, I just wanted to know from you first, and how did that designation feel to you?
Yeah, it's actually a great honor. And I just recently found out this week that I was also named in 2025. So 2 years in a row,
great.
It's such an honor. And that recognition is actually a recognition from my peers. So it's other lawyers, saying like, oh, this lawyer is great. This is like the best lawyer, right? And so that is, it's such an honor to have that recognition because it's one thing, the goal is always, to be great for your client, advocate for your client, right? Provide that quality representation. But when, your peers see that and they recognize that and they know what that looks like to be a good lawyer, to advocate, to have quality, that is like so, such an honor. And I don't take that lightly, and it just helps push forward, our mandate of like access to justice and, having good quality for our clients.
That's great. I just wanted to ask you, what personal or work accomplishment are you most proud of and why?
I think my biggest achievement was becoming a certified specialist in immigration law by the Law Society of Ontario. This designation was really important because, not many lawyers have this designation. Only about 2% of all lawyers in Ontario and only about 70 immigration lawyers have it. And what I found to be, this designation means that the Law Society you've proven to the Law Society that you have years of experience, you have professional knowledge, and your peers also recognize that. And so it's a really strong recommendation from the Law Society. And so when I'm going to a client and saying, you can trust me, I have the full weight of the Law Society behind me. And that is really such an accomplishment, being an entrepreneur, being able to do that. And it really, feeds into our mandate of providing quality representation to our clients.
That's great. I wanted to also ask you, what is the role of technology in immigration today? Obviously, everybody's tech savvy and talking about technology. How is it changing the field when it comes to immigration law?
Yeah, and I think, for a long time, immigration was still very old school, where there were still paper applications, faxes, right? For the federal court, we still had, application records that were done by paper. And it was really COVID that really pushed immigration themselves into this world of online portals and, relying on their websites and things like this. And I think that really helped because now you can have access a little bit faster, right? And you can monitor things. And so that's one thing, right? So that was maybe a silver lining of COVID. It really pushed immigration to this next level. But I also think what's really interesting about technology and immigration is the use of AI. So, and, algorithms. So right now, and not too long ago, immigration introduced the system called the Chinook system, where for temporary applications, this algorithm that they've made, which is AI generated, will triage certain applications, and they will essentially make a decision on this application, which reasonably we as practitioners find problematic because you don't have a person reviewing this. Now, of course, every person also has biases, algorithms have biases, but what we're seeing is that a lot of these temporary applications are getting refused, and we're not getting logical reasons, right, behind it. And so what we're seeing is there are more people going to the federal court to appeal these decisions. And is this really effective? I don't know, right? Maybe not now. The federal court has made decisions about, the Chinook system, and they have not said that it's not something it can't use. So they are, and we know that in our day and age, it's only going to get more, right? There's going to be more use of AI. And so we as practitioners have to be on top of that and learn how to work with it, right? So that's always going to be developing. So it's not going anywhere. So technology, I mean, it's always going to just keep expanding. So we just have to make sure we're on top of all these developments.
And to be adaptable too, right?
100%. Yeah.
Exactly. What would you say is the biggest risk you could have ever taken?
Yeah. I think it's really just boils down to me becoming an entrepreneur. I think
Right.
always that's such a big risk. I think at the time when I was deciding, what should I do? Should I maybe join a firm? Should I, start my own practice and become an entrepreneur? And I think I was really motivated to do it for a few reasons. And I think, one of the things that was most risky was I was entering into an industry that was really saturated, right? It's not only immigration lawyers that, are out there, building firms. There's consultants that can also, represent immigrants, and also agents, and also, other like ghost agents and stuff that are out in other countries. And so I'm entering, this field that's, again, full of a lot of competition. So what I wanted to do was build a firm that, didn't focus on the way that law firms usually are, which is really built on, badge of honor for, burnout and no work-life balance. And, this is not something I wanted. I wanted my team to come to work, give our clients high quality, but like have a life outside of work. So that was one. I didn't want to, perpetuate that, that sort of life of law, right? And two, what I wanted is, and what our mandate was, is this access to justice, right? So I know that number one, as an entrepreneur, you're looking at profitability. You have to be profitable, right? But one thing was that I'm not looking at a client that you are my profit, like I'm going to get money directly from you. It was that I am, as a lawyer, need to offer quality representation and also just information to individuals. And in order to do that, I started doing, 10 minutes of free advice. So you don't need to, pay a lawyer hundreds of dollars just to get information. And that was really the starting of my firm. I was like, I'm going to just offer information as a lawyer to advocate for them. And that really has stuck with me for a long time and I still do that. And so clients can call, talk to me, and then I'm not looking at them as, okay, am I going to turn you around as a client? Am I going to get money from you? It's like, let me offer you information. And then they realize maybe later that, okay, she knows what she's talking about. I can trust her. But this access to justice has always been a really core mandate for us. So it's not about pushing out clients and just, figuring out the options later. It's like making sure they understand what's going on. And then, yes, they want to retain us to help them. Great. That's a bonus.
Yeah, that's great. You used a clever bait there, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yes. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their legal career?
Yeah, so I think what's important for young people who are interested in law, maybe they're in law school, maybe they're in undergrad, is really just getting exposure. I think there's one thing about being in school, and there's a whole other thing about really practically working as a lawyer. So I always say, contact lawyers, like cold call them or cold email them. At the end of the day, lawyers love talking, and they love to talk about their experiences and talk about their, journey. And so if you email a bunch of lawyers, there will be one that will get back to you, and maybe one of them will turn into your mentor. And also just expose yourself to a lot of areas of law. I myself started my articles in civil litigation. I knew I wanted to be an advocate. I knew I wanted to litigate, but I didn't know maybe where I was going to end up. But civil litigation seemed like a good place. But when I was doing civil litigation, my principal gave me a detention review for an immigration client. He just happened to have it because it was a favor he was going to do for a colleague of his. And so I got stuck with that, right? And I went and I did it, and I was exposed to immigration, and I realized, oh, this is where I want to be. Like, this is where I need to, spend my, time focusing on. And without that experience, I would have ended up in civil litigation. So younger practitioners, younger lawyers, or, people who are interested in going into law, go intern at a family law or an immigration, right? Criminal. And then maybe you'll see, well, this is where I can see myself, right? That's always just exposure.
Thank you, Ms. Mangat, for your time. We really appreciate you telling us all about the intricacies of law. For all our viewers, stay tuned to another episode of The Edge, a Leader Show.